Hi. Today we have Bob Lee with us here. We're going to talk to him a little bit about his experiences serving in the military and serving our nation. And how are you today, Bob?
I'm doing just great.
That's good.
Nice to meet you, Nick.
Good. Nice to meet you, too. I've known you for the last 9 months or a year,
Yeah.
and I find that you're a rare individual.
Well, gee, thanks.
And I want to thank you for spending your time on camera here today with us.
Oh, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ready? Right. On. Forward. Hard. Hard.
Well, Bob, let's get started here.
All right, Nick.
What branch of the service did you enter?
I was in the Army, got drafted.
Oh, drafted, huh?
Got drafted in
What branch were you in?
the cavalry, Army cavalry. What branch I was in?
Yeah.
The 11th Armored Cavalry, the elite 11th Armored Cavalry.
That's very interesting.
Tanks and helicopters, and
Where did you go take basic training?
I went through Fort Dix, New Jersey for basic, and then from there I went on to Colorado to join up with Fort Carson, to join with the mechanized unit out there, and got my background in tanks and armor vehicles.
Did you ask for that particular?
Yeah, actually I did, but I was in hopes of going to Germany. See, I was told that if I signed up 1 extra year, I could be a soldier in Germany on the border, possibly. And I said, wow, what sold me was the fact they told me that's where the girls were. That was in 1967.
Oh,
68.
that was during the Vietnam.
Yeah, well, I think the other reason I wanted to go to Germany was, like I said, chance to see Germany, not
And,
Vietnam.
Well, where did you end up? In
Well,
the States?
yeah, that's what happened. I all of a sudden one day after AIT in Fort Carson, out comes a roll call, and all the guys that stepped forward, including me, were told, here's your orders for Vietnam. And so that's how it worked. And you just kind of sit back and go, wait a minute, I was promised Germany, but didn't work. So anyway.
Well, maybe let's go back to basic training for a minute, and then
Yeah.
we'll maybe go overseas to Vietnam. But how was the food at basic training?
Oh, I thought it was lousy. Yeah,
Really?
I really did, yeah.
Did you have any friends there that you served with later on?
Yes, I had a buddy. I went in the buddy system, and he and I hung out quite a bit together at Fort Dix. And it wasn't until the end of our basic training that we got separated. And the reason we got separated is I was called to be a catcher on the 1st Army softball team.
Wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't know what I was getting into at the time, but it kept me there for an extra 6 weeks and allowed me to have fun with the guys and bus trip to all the local different bases around the 1st Army.
Was that during your advanced infantry training?
No, Colorado was advanced training after the baseball 6 weeks.
Okay.
If we would have had a winning season, I'd probably still be playing softball. But they got rid of us after 6 weeks, and my buddy went off to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Oh, the armored.
Yeah, he went to Fort Knox, and I ended up going to Fort Carson for mechanized. But okay.
So, do you remember when you first landed in country?
Oh,
Vietnam?
do I ever? Never. You never forget those kind of things. But bag and baggage, they called it, and they shipped us to a place called the 90th Replacement. That's in Long Binh, South Vietnam. And all you could hear was rockets, and it wasn't a thought of sleeping for the night.
What was your reaction to that?
Well, I said, boy, it's going to be a long 365 days, I can tell already.
Oh, was that the tour?
That's what one tour.
year?
One tour is 1 year, yeah.
Oh, one tour.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're looking at the time, because that's what I was there for, one tour. So the next morning, sun up, we had a roll call, and my name got called, and they said, you're going to be assigned to the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, the Black Horse Troopers.
Oh, is that what's on your shirt
This is the patch that I probably wore and still wear to this day, and I attend all the reunions, and I can never give that up. It's kind of like I graduated from being one of the Cav troopers, and it was quite an experience.
In every way, the Black Horse Regiment had earned its spurs. By early spring 1968, the Black Horse insignia, granted under fire in Vietnam, became a symbol of valor.
Jumped in the back of a sergeant's Jeep, and he said, can you handle an M60 machine gun, because we might need it along the way? And I said, I sure can. Before I realized it, we're bouncing down this old road. And cutting around and going through a village, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I got 365 more days. Anyway, we pulled into this tank area where I was going to be assigned to a tank, and when the sergeant started beeping the horn, and everybody come running out to see who the new guy was, which is me, and he introduced me as, this guy right here, he's a general. His name is Robert E. Lee. And I went, no, it's not. And I shook my head, and he looked at me, and he said, it's the general. You're going to be the general from now on. And okay, who needs a tanker here? And one of the guys, one of the other sergeants, put his hand up. He said, I need a driver. And he said, Lee, you're going to be assigned to tank number 15. You're going to be the driver. Can you drive an M48A3? And I said, yeah, I sure can.
Despite everything, however, the 11th Armored Cavalry continues to forge ahead. In a land where even the earth itself fights against men and machines, the vast logistics of maintenance and repair keep them rolling.
And he said, well, that's going to be your new assignment. And from there, we'll see how it lands. Anyway, so I introduced myself to the guys, told them I was from a little town in Maine, and they all welcomed me on board. There's 17 tanks strong, and by the looks of some of these guys, I knew it was going to be a long year. They had some pretty rough-looking clothes on and whatnot.
Once again, the assigned mission was accomplished.
A lot of camaraderie right from day one, because all the guys in the Black Horse Regiment really look forward to having somebody on their back. Yeah. Hi.
Can you tell me a little bit, and do you mind telling me a little bit of the experiences you had in the country in Vietnam?
No, I don't mind at all. In fact, I'm glad to share that. Starting with day one, being assigned to the 11th Armored Cav, I knew from hearing from hearing of its background that it was an elite outfit, some really tight guys, and headed up by General George S. Patton Jr., the son of the World War II Patton. And anyway, it was an adventure. Here I was, 19 years old, 20 years old, and My first assignment was to be a driver on the tank, an M48A3, 52-ton tank, 90-millimeter main gun.
Units of the 11th penetrated into terrain previously considered too rough for vehicles. Once again, the men of the 11th Armored Cavalry beat the jungle, pressing forward regardless of terrain.
Twin coax M73 machine guns, M60 and a 50 caliber on the turret, and one of 17 tanks within the first squadron of the 11th ACR. And what a team we were.
What does ACR mean?
Armored Cavalry Regiment, yeah. Nicknamed the Black Horse for the insignia that goes with it. That was something that happened in Vietnam. Some people look at it and think of Ferrari. It doesn't have anything to do with Ferrari, but anyway, the colors in the horse means the cavalry in armor. Yeah, so anyway, part of the team, and before we knew it, we were living in the boonies and traveling all around and doing things from security on Highway 1 in South Vietnam in 3 Corps. We were providing security for the convoys. We were doing anything they wanted us to do, break trail, move in looking for the NVA and South Vietnamese. It was, you know, it was an excitement kind of thing, you know. I knew anybody that messed around with us was going to be in trouble, because we had a lot of firepower, and that was a good, confident feeling.
The newest armored vehicle with the 11th is the Sheridan. It mounts a 152-millimeter gun, which also launches the Shillelagh missile.
Until you run over a landmine, and then you wonder, uh-oh, and then you get hit with a rocket-propelled grenade.
Best of all, the Viet Cong learned respect for the regiment at the outset.
All those things came into play over time.
Did your tank get hit?
Yes, it did. In fact, got hit. I've been in a couple different battles. One of them, I was awarded the Silver Star.
That one is?
Yep.
And then the third one is the Silver Star.
Correct.
Well, I understand. I'm an Army veteran too, but I know that they don't just give those up like Cracker Jacks.
Thanks. I've always been proud of that award, and but it also brings back a lot of memories that day of how lucky I really was to be singled out for that, because a lot of action happened that day. We lost a tank commander, my tank commander. We got hit with a rocket-propelled grenade, and it eliminated our communication and made us sit there like a duck in a pond. And
why were you sitting there? When your tracks were blown off, or what?
no, we got hit in the turret and by a B-40 rocket, and it exploded on the inside. I got a little shrapnel in the face, but I was a minor thing compared to what happened to the tank and to the commander, and yeah, and anyway.
Could you tell us how that happened, or how you ended up being awarded the Silver Star?
Well, we have this colonel that likes to fly around in choppers over all of our contacts. Helicopters, and he was a first squadron commander, and he happened to be up there with his binoculars. This is after, I'm telling you the story that I found out how it all came about. But he was told to circle the contact that was going on as we were busting jungle. And bottom line is, he's looking down there saying, there's a soldier on the ground, and I'm watching him go in the back of a bunker complex. And Jesus, but to be honest with you, I think I probably should have got a kick in the butt, because I needed to go to the tank next to me and tell him we had a wounded tank commander, and we had no communication. And we were just sitting there in amongst the trees. We couldn't turn the barrel. We couldn't do anything. We were like a duck on a pond. But anyway, he was looking down at me, and he saw me shooting my M79 grenade launcher into the back of the bunker. There was a few Vietnamese set up there that didn't know I was behind them.
You left the tank.
I left the tank, and they tell you in armor school you're supposed to stay with your tank. But under that situation, I think it wasn't part of the training. It was something I felt I had to do. Because I had a guy bleeding to death, and I was.
You just reacted to
I'm
help another human
reacting
being.
exactly, but anyway, that's probably all I need to tell you about that. If you want to like to read the article or something, I think they made it pretty accurate on the write-up. But anyway, it was just one of those days, March 10th, 1970, and I was awarded the Silver Star and Purple Heart for my actions that day. We went on to do all kinds of other missions, and every day was another day in the neighborhood kind of thing,
Okay.
We actually went in and crossed into Cambodia on May 1st of 1970. 17 tanks strong lined up, and Tricky Dick gave us the okay to cross into Cambodia.
Oh, Nixon.
Nixon, yeah, we referred to him as Tricky Dick, but
Okay.
anyway, we went in there. The Cav, not only did we go with all the tanks and armored personnel carriers, but we went with the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, just blasted into, and they couldn't believe we were crossing the border, because this is the first time we were allowed to do that on May 1st, 1970.
Politically.
It really came across as quite an undertaking.
What was the reaction when you came back to the States?
Well, I think I was a lot like a lot of the guys, because I've heard a lot of the other vets explaining things. We basically was told, don't wear your uniform on the flight, and don't talk about Vietnam, because nobody wants to hear it. Kind of keep your mouth shut, and you'll be a lot better off. Just kind of keep a low profile. And I mean, that happened from the minute we landed in Oakland Army Base, and we got on our flights to our different destinations home. There was a lot of different people that were not very responsive to us. They were busting our chops about what we did, where we were, and how things came down. And that's always affected me, that feeling. And it went on for a few years of just laying low. Nothing a few beers won't help. It would help. And anyway, it was a trying time in America then. I came home in January of '71 after completing a second tour.
Oh.
Yeah, my second. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about it, and you might not understand, but I feel comfortable about telling you. I went on R&R at the end of my
R&R means rest and
recuperation. Yeah, I went to. I was told by my company commander to get myself out of the tank and get into the area where you can jump on a flight and pick where you want to go, and see you in a week. So, jumped on a helicopter, flew to the location that they disembarked us, and I met a young Marine while I was standing there, and he said to me, he says, "Hey, I'm going to Sydney. You want to go with me as a buddy?" And we kept talking. He said, "All you got to do is come with me. I'll go get us signed up. We'll take Sydney. If they got seats on that plane, we can go."
Australia.
Sydney, Australia, yeah, where the girls are friendly and nice looking, and they speak American. So I said, "You got it, man. I'm with you." So it was an instant bond with me and my Marine Corps friend, and we talked and shared a lot of things. And he told me that he had something up his sleeve, and I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "I got an address of a nursing facility, and they like American GIs." And I said, "Oh, okay, sounds like a plan." He says, "Yeah, just come with me, I'll get you fixed up." So next thing you know, I'm in Sydney, Australia, and I'm meeting a nice nurse training young lady, and we spent the whole week enjoying each other's company. And before you know it, I made her a promise that I was coming back, and she said, "Yeah, sure you are." And I readily told her, one way or another, I'm coming back here. I won't be here. So anyway, the next thing you know, we went out. We went to see this guy live from the U.S. of A. We saw Tom Jones playing there live on stage. We enjoyed that. Went out to dinner. Did all kinds of things in between. And anyway, the week came to an end, and I promised I was coming back. Went back to Vietnam, and now I'm a short timer, which means I don't have a lot of time left in my first tour. In fact, only days. And I was bored hanging around waiting for my freedom flight to go back to America and on to Fort Knox, Kentucky, I think is where my orders said. So I ended up volunteering to take mail out to the local helicopter in the morning and putting the mail bags on the choppers. And one day, one of the pilots motioned me over and he said, "Hey, Sarge, is there any chance, do you know anything about M60 machine guns?" And I said, "Yeah, I know I can strip them with my eyes closed." He said, "Well, and fire them." And he said, "Would you consider flying with us today? We're short-handed. We're missing a door gunner." And I said, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind if you can get an okay for me to go with you. I'd be glad to." So he got on the radio and talked to my company commander, and they said, "Go for it." So I flew with them, and I immensely took to that crew of pilots and the crew chief, and I felt really honored to be there sitting behind those guns and ready for anything that might happen. The first couple of days, there wasn't much happening except for flying around. And but then all of a sudden, I realized, what am I doing? I'm going home in a few days. Well, anyway, I went home. Before I went home, I talked to the pilot about re-upping for an extension to my time in Vietnam. And he said, "Easy, piece of cake. You can stay right in your own squadron, in the first squadron, and you can be part of our group, the guy that you're flying with," which was the 1st Squadron, 11th ACR Air Section. And anyway, here I was, a door gunner. I went home for 30 days. When I came back, they were still there waiting for me to return for my extended stay. And sure enough, I jumped on board, and that began a whole new venture in Vietnam. Now I'm looking at it from the sky instead of riding around in the tanks and the heat and the monsoon and the bugs and the jungle and all that, and sleeping on the back of the tanks. Now we got a barracks with a building, and we had showers and all that. That was a big improvement, not to mention flight pay, and not to mention the camaraderie and all the other things that go along with it. But anyhow, I'm rattling on here. Then one day, our helicopter was picked. We used to fly the command and control helicopter for the 1st Squadron commander, which meant some days we were flying supplies to troops. Some days we were just taking the colonel around for a tour of the area so he could scope out where to move the troops and that kind of thing. And then other days we were picking up medevacs. We got volunteered for a lot of medevacs, and we were always proud to do it. And anyway, then all of a sudden one day we got a call to meet at the pad at 7 a.m. and be ready to fly, and mission would be told when we got there. We thought it was just another day in the OK Corral. Turned out to be a deuce and a half showed up, and it had 6 lovely ladies on it. They were Miss America 1970. And those girls put a smile on our face, and they jumped on board, and I was fortunate enough to have a lot of conversation with them. and they were dressed with these kind of jumpsuits and white sneakers and smiling and just a breath for sore eyes, you know what I mean? And before I know it, the pilots are jumping on board and they're giving us the okay where we got a mission. And we didn't know what was coming down, but it turned out to be 3 locations in a triangle kind of thing. We're told one location at a time was told to the pilot on where to go and when to be there. And I can tell you this much: there was a tractor trailer truck, a small bodied tractor trailer truck at each location, and they were flown in by Chinooks, kind of the same, just before we got there, enough time for them to get set up. So the enemy couldn't figure out what was going on, I guess. But anyway, we would fly them to those locations, help them disembark, and all the soldiers would be gathered around the stage for these girls to get on. It's kind of like a mini Bob Hope show. But the girls didn't have to do much. All they had to do was stand there and smile and say hi and talk to the guys. And when I looked around at those guys, I thought to myself, boy, these guys are going crazy over these girls just like we all were. But anyway, when we finished the first location, put the girls back in the seatbelts and flew to point B, and destination. And sure enough, we did it again 3 times in one day. We did that, and anyway, it turned out to be a day I'll never forget, and my fellow crew members as well. But this pilot that flew that mission, I got to say a word about him. I would fly with him anywhere, anytime. This guy was the best. His name was Pappy Pappan, or Edward Pappan, but we called him Pappy. Pappy was a one-of-a-kind pilot, in my opinion. He could fly any kind of machine. He flew Loaches, he flew birds, regular fixed-wing planes, and he could fly with only instruments. And he had to do that numerous times with us on board, because we'd get caught in monsoon rains and high winds. And anyway, Pappy Pappan was the guy to fly with, and he could reiterate on these stories about what happened that day, some of which I probably shouldn't tell you guys, but anyway, it was a remarkable day and a memory that I'll never forget. Because there's a lot of other memories too, so that made up for them. But anyhow, enough about that. I ended up only flying for 10 months. Got 2 months early out of my 3-year obligation. And before I knew it, I was back home in California, where I had a brand new car waiting for me too, by the way. That was another reason why I went back to Vietnam. I bought a brand new car in Vietnam, a 1970 Plymouth Duster. At least it was supposed to be a 1970. It turned out to be a 1971 Plymouth Duster, and with a 318, pretty blue. And I got it at Oakland Army Terminal and drove it clear across America and home to Maine, where I grew up, in Old Town, Maine, up where they make the canoes, kayaks, canoe factory of the world. But anyway, went back to Maine and kind of took a low profile for a year or two, drank a lot of beer, and couldn't find a job as a tanker or helicopters. And so I figured I'd draw unemployment for about 9 months, I think. And in the interim, I met some girls at the University of Maine in Orono, and dated a girl for quite some time. Then all of a sudden one day, I woke up and said, you know what, I gotta go do something with the rest of my life. I gotta give up the beer and the partying and move on. So I chose East Coast Aerotech, an aviation school down here in Massachusetts, and went to school on the GI Bill, joined the Army Reserves out at Fort Devens so I could get some extra money in my pocket while I was going to school. And it turned out really good. I got a new dog, a white German Shepherd, that I couldn't say enough about. The dog was just super smart to start with, and I didn't have to train him much, and I got him for nothing because he was the oddball of the litter. And I said, you know what? You and I are going to have a great career together, and we did. Graduated from school, went to work for Sikorsky Helicopter down in Connecticut, and that was a 2-year commitment with Sikorsky, and we overhauled H-34 helicopters, and tore them apart and rebuilt them, sold them to the Arabs, believe it or not. From what I was told, they paid $35,000 for each of those helicopters. Sikorsky bought them back from the Coast Guard and the Marine Corps, turned them into a really fancy, excuse me, helicopters that are air-conditioned, new rotor blades, turbine engines, took out the old recip engines. It was quite a project, lasted 2 years. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, they laid us off. The last in were the first ones to be laid off. They sold a whole pile of these helicopters to the Arabs, all different colors, purple, green, yellow, whatever. And we had to move on with our life. And wouldn't you know that there was a gas shortage in the mid-'70s. And it was just in time the turbines weren't any problem, but anyway, they needed the jet fuel. But for me, now I needed a new job. I came back to the town that I lived in Maynard, Mass. And wouldn't you know, I met a young lady, and her name is Angela. And we've been together now for 48 years. And, you know, she told me, I think she fell in love with my white German Shepherd, not me. But after a while, we decided to get married, and she invited me home to meet her children, and I said, "Ooh, how many you got?" And she said, "Well, there are four of them, and come on home and meet them." So I went home and met them, and wouldn't you know that? Then she started telling me about the company she worked for, was named Digital Equipment Corporation, and that they were hiring people. And with my background, she was willing to bet I could get a job. And so I went and applied for the job, and the guy asked me a couple basic questions, and I said, sure, I know how to read an ohm meter and an oscilloscope and a DVM. And he said, can you start on Monday? Digital Equipment, by the way, turned out to be the second largest computer company in the world. And I had one of those kind of jobs where I got to meet people and greet people and install their new computer systems. I was known as a hardware installation specialist. And that was just beautiful for me. I got a new car as part of the job, got to travel around New England, even back to my hometown in Maine. I went up to the Indian reservation, installed computers up there. I installed them at hospitals and banks, you name it, all throughout New England, which meant a lot of driving. About every year and a half, I get a new car because that means I put more than 50,000 miles on them. Well, 5 years into that, there was an opportunity for me to advance to the next level of computers, which meant now I was asked by the group of actually the president of the company, Ken Olson, said he wanted a dedicated team of field service guys to travel around North America and set up trade shows. So if you can only visualize, I had to turn in my company car and for rent-a-cars in airports, airplanes, and hotels. And it was 11, almost 12 years of complete travel in North America. And I loved every minute of it. It was like a dream come true. The pay was great. The respect was great. The opportunity to meet some of my Vietnam buddies in different states was great. Getting to see the country that I fought for, United States of America. There's no other place. I'm not going to tell you the only places I don't want to go, but I've been to almost everywhere in the United States and Canada, fortunately for that career. Well, 17 and a half years later, from the start of digital, we were downsized. The company went up in the air, and we got bought out by a lot of smaller companies. And now all of a sudden we're in the early 90s, and I'm looking for another job at my mid-year crisis. And so it was time to start again. And wouldn't you know, because of my service time, I had a slight disability from the military, and they were willing to give me extra points if I took the postal exam. So I went and took it thinking, you know, I wouldn't mind being a local postal guy, so I don't have to travel anymore after doing a couple million miles. And that kept me close to my fiance. And anyway, I signed up for the U.S. Postal Service. And I ended up working for them for the next 12 years. And all of a sudden I found out that my time in the post office would allow me to retire early with 3 years of active duty, put on the 12 years of my postal time. So I ended up at age 62 retiring, not with full benefits, but at least with retiring. And thanks to the VA and my doctor's appointments and my ability to use the VA, I figured it was time to stay retired and do some volunteer work. So I volunteered to be a driver for the DAV, where I could be around comrades and other vets that needed rides to and from the VA hospital. Did that for 3 years, and you know, a couple days a week. Started out 1 day a week, a couple days a week, and then all of a sudden I realized I think I got another job, but it doesn't pay anything. Supposed to get a free lunch each day, but most of the time they keep you out so you can't eat lunch. But at any rate, bottom line is it was an experience. Every year I look forward to the 11th Armored Cavalry reunions, and they are held somewhere in North America, in the continental United States so far. We've had 37 reunions. We had reunions at the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. We've been to Colorado, where I was trained at. We've been to Fort Knox. We've been to all of the major places that would handle as big a crowd as we have. The 11th Armored Cavalry has 6,000 men assigned to that regiment. And at any one given time, those guys that did the tour, the Vietnam era, from 1967 to 1972, were asked to come to a reunion. So we were constantly getting a experience of seeing old faces, new faces, and gathering at a hotel somewhere in North America. And during that time, it was like, wow, most of us spent the whole week there, but some of the guys only came for the long weekend. And depending on their expenses, because we had to pay for our own hotels and airfares and whatnot. And the bottom line was, I look forward to it every year. I get to see some of my old buddies. There's a lot of them that have passed so far, and there's not a moment I don't think about those guys. And so now I'm involved with, I'm jumping a little fast forward here, but I'm involved with trying to find other vets that, the way I was found, can we get these guys together and maybe have coffee and lunch and breakfast or something, and we can share our experiences. No, and not about how high we can, what kind of medals or awards, but how we can share our camaraderie. Each one of us has something to offer to each other, and we gather around for breakfasts now. We have, I helped pioneer a group 40 years ago. One of three guys that started a group called the Vietnam Veterans of America in Leominster, Mass. And I've helped draft quite a few of the guys that are in the group now that didn't think they really wanted to join any veterans group, but found it to be, great camaraderie. Anyway, we get together 1 day a week at least for a breakfast or a lunch or a brunch. And it's anybody that can make it, that doesn't have a VA appointment or some other necessity. But as we're all in our mid-70s now, so a couple of the guys are close to 80, you know, we all got things that hold us back, grandkids, you name it, medical appointments, and so on. But anyway, it's just, it's together then, together again, the way I feel. It doesn't matter whether you are Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, it doesn't matter, Coast Guard, you're all welcome for breakfast and brunch and to join hands with us and share those experiences. So there's not much else I can really say unless you want to ask me something. I don't mind telling you that I'm a proud American. And I love to see we have local parades here in Maynard, Mass. And I encourage all the guys to come down, if for nothing else, to shake hands with each other and say, hey, we got to keep this going because America is our home and it means so much to all of us. I want to tell you, I met my buddy here, Nick, not that long ago at a DAV meeting, and I took to the man, quite frankly. He's in his 90s and he's a Korean War veteran, and I respect those guys a lot because I respect any veteran, but him particularly, and he goes above and beyond with trying to help other vets too. And he asked me politely one day, would I mind sitting down and doing a little commentary for this? And I'm proud to have been able to do it. And I just wanted to let you know that we always, anybody that happens to see this, that wants to come along for a breakfast or a brunch, it happens just call me. I'll leave you my phone number and give me a call at 978-697-6695, my cell phone. I'd sure like to meet you and greet you, and we don't have to talk about Vietnam. We can just talk about anything. Maybe you need a ride to the VA. Maybe you just need somebody to talk to. But we have some things in place. There's a place called Clear Path for New England that's down at Fort Devens, and I enjoy going there every Thursday, and they have a nice lunch for us. And there's a secret word I'm going to give you. If you tell them when you walk into the front door that the general, you're a guest of the general, even though I was only a staff sergeant when I got out, my nickname is the General, Bob Lee. You're a guest of mine. They'll let you in for dinner and look me up while you're there and go back many times as you want. It's a home for veterans. They train animals, dogs there. They do lots of things. They have nurses there. They have help with clothing issues, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, nice to have met you, and hope I didn't bore you too much. Allons, it means moving on. Thank you. Have a great day.
Ready? Face. Forward. On. Forward. Hard. Hard.